Welcome, Internet Capitalists, to the next episode of our crypto interview series. Today, we're excited to have Stephen Cesaro here with us. Stephen is one of the best technical traders on crypto, is also the co-host of the Alfalfa Podcast with three of his buddies, and just launched the Magic Lines community, a bespoke channel dedicated to serious crypto TA. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Ben, you were just talking about the Alfalfa Podcast and the Magic Lines community.
Yeah, highly recommend both. I was introduced through Bankless, actually, so thank David Hoffman for that one. But yeah, avid podcast listener, and I wanted to bring up two things from last show. First, Stephen had a nice reframing of the OnlyFans social issue here in the United States as a prisoner's dilemma issue, and that was great. I had to point that out. And then second, I have to say that you were talking about wives and girlfriends listening to the show. My fiance actually listens in the background when I listen as well. So she's in on that 10% women who listen. And you are her second favorite behind Armand. So I had to let you know. Yeah, number two. That's that's not bad.
That's fine. I like to think I have the hearts and mind of the men, but he got the ladies.
Hey, you might rank up the leaderboard there. I'll let you know. But yeah, awesome show. So keep it up. I just wanted to start out with that. And second, Magic Lines Discord community that Stephen just started up. I'm a part of it. Super high value. If anyone wants to check that out, we'll have a link. But if you want to learn TA, if you want to understand the markets, it's a very good place to go for that.
That's awesome. And I believe that is a very unique start to the show. I don't think we've ever delved into where podcast hosts rate on likability, but that's awesome. So the first question, Stephen, I always ask is, where'd you come from and how'd you get into crypto?
I found crypto very early. I used to be a professional internet poker player, and we hung out on the 2+2 forums back in the day, like pre-social media, right? That was where we all congregated. And the 2+2 forums found the Bitcoin white paper very early because it's this collection of like internet nerds kind of who are fairly technical and on the cutting edge of stuff and risky. Right. So I saw the Bitcoin white paper. I was immediately like, oh, this is very cool. Very, very cool. I want to buy some. And I feel like the price was probably like 10 cents at the time, 20 cents maybe. I still have these direct messages on the site where I was trying to send a guy PokerStars money to get I was trying to send him like $5,000 in PokerStars money to get the Bitcoin, but I couldn't figure out how to set up the damn wallet because you had to download that QT file and extract it. There's all this like weird stuff. It was so early, and I was just too busy playing poker, and I was like, whatever, and then I forgot about it. And that Bitcoin's probably worth like $1 billion now, at least like 500 million or something, so that was painful. But I kind of forgot about it for a little bit. 2013, I kind of got back in and bought like 1,000 Bitcoin, and then that went up to like a couple $100,000 or something. And I was like, oh my God. And then I sold it all. So that was dumb. And then, 2017 cycle, got back in again. And then I had learned all the wrong lessons. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna sell anything this time. I remember I ran like $20,000 or $30,000 up into like 2 or 3 million or something crazy. Cause it was just nuts. Like we were just buying these stupid altcoins like Verge and all this dog shit. They're going up like 50x in like a week and over. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then I lost it all, obviously. I probably ended up with like, like 80 grand at the end of it. So 4x my money, but felt like I had lost everything. And then like when DeFi summer rolled around, I was kind of paying attention. I started playing around with the DeFi stuff, and in early 2020, was farming yams and all of that weirdness, and got very into that. Started farming, and that was when I got like really heavy into the trading as well. Like I had always traded. Like I worked at Bridgewater with Ray Dalio out of college. I was a trader there for like a year, trading bonds basically. And, you know, while I was playing poker, I had always traded on the side. I did a lot of option writing. I would swing trade a little bit. But DeFi summer was where I got like really locked in and started doing crypto and trading like 12 hours a day and just like absolutely mental. And it's basically been like that ever since. So this is coming up on year 5 of just nonstop trench warfare, basically, for me. So yeah,
So
here I am.
the past summer, I think you had to basically take some time off. I think you went away for a couple of weeks and just to get away from it as best you could to refresh yourself, I guess.
Yeah, I nuked myself this summer. I pulled a classic move of me where I called the top pretty well on we do the Irresponsibly Long podcast, which we just brought back actually a couple days ago. So check that out. But the last full episode of Irresponsibly Long that I did with my co-host, you know, I talked about how I thought it was a top in Bitcoin for a bunch of reasons, and I was just pulling out of everything. And then they approved like the ETH ETF, and I kind of talked myself into this big long, and I got like shellacked, dude. Like along with a lot of other people on that. Um, kind of let my emotions like override my trading system to a degree, and I took like an enormous loss. And yeah, I took like a month off, which for me was a lot. But kind of came back September, October with fresh eyes, and I just like early October, I think I just was just like looking at everything, all of the, not just the markets, but the politics, especially. I was very into politics, still like enjoy politics. Like it's a thing I'm very into. And I was just like, there's no fucking way this guy is going to lose. Sorry, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Like there's no way. And I just kept looking into it more and more and more. And I ended up just betting the house on Trump, like just like, probably literally my actual house. And he won, thankfully. And then we just turbo ran everything up all fall. So we're very back, and we're back ahead to where much ahead of where I was at the beginning of the summer, even, which is good because like I definitely took a large hit. It was one of the larger mistakes in my life, so it felt good to come back from that.
Well, since then, ETH's underperformance has been tough for a lot of people because I've really gotten into crypto through Bankless. So obviously, huge ETH bulls, and I kind of had that
Yeah.
framework there. And I was like, yeah, ETH ETF, we're going to get the institutional bid as soon as it launched, and that's not what happened. So I don't think you were alone there. And I think we fall into that same camp. We were turbo bulls from there, and generally, we're more spot trader guys, especially at the Grand Tonto there. But I think we were in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The painful thing about that trade too is like I actually made a balls ton of money on the trade initially. Like on that move, that candle up, I caught like that almost that entire candle. And I was like very close to just taking profit there. And instead of taking profit, I effectively like added, right? I did like the worst thing possible. So I went from like big up to really big down. Just colossal blunder. But you know, live and learn.
You mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about before we kind of dive into the more hardcore stuff, and that's emotion. I mean, you're obviously good at this. I found when I've dabbled at this, the emotional part of it crushes me. Either the stress of watching the positions, that sort of thing. So what is, are you just naturally, you can set aside the emotional part most of the time, or what's your process there to just look at the data?
I actually don't think I'm that good with my emotions, to be honest, but it's possible I'm just so far removed from a normal human at this point that maybe I'm like evaluating myself for me, because my girlfriend does tell me I'm a bit of a robot sometimes. I've always been like an analytical person, but I mean, I probably played professional poker for 10 years, right? Since I was 17, 18 till I was like 28. And I played for like a lot of money, not initially, but like dollars turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars like relatively quickly. And then like I was like a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, like throwing around these huge sums of money. And it didn't go well. Like when I was 19, 20, like I went I did not grow up with a lot of money, and I suddenly found myself with like a $200,000-$300,000 bankroll, and I was like, oh my god, I'm like the richest person I know by a mile, and I like lost it all in like a week. And then I ran it all back, and then I did it again. Like I had 2 separate occasions where I went from like zero to hundreds of thousands of dollars as like a 20-year-old, which and like lost it all, right? So a lot of the way I am today is just because of experiencing the pain. I think some people like have to like we have to like touch the hot stove. You just can't like some people are capable of doing this. I also think those people are like worse risk takers in general. I think a lot of the people who are the best at this are actually also the people who are likely to just completely blow themselves out in the early days, but then in learning from that become really really good. So yeah, for me it's just reps. It's just reps. I mean, I played millions of hands of poker for
Yep.
many years, and then also just nuked my bankroll so many times, not just in poker, but I did it in trading too. Like I've blown a lot of trading accounts. And that like every time you do it, you kind of learn a new lesson, you get a new scar, and then that just guides you going forward. But you could probably have a lot people on here that are much more disciplined, rules-based people than me. I'm going to be quite frank. I'm definitely on the wilder side of some other people that I know who are much more robotic in the system and what they trade and everything.
Gotcha. Well, let's, I guess, jump into some of the crypto stuff. And I guess we'd just like to hear what's your take on the entire market going into 2025, the new administration, and all the macroeconomic stuff with interest rates and inflation and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my views align very closely with. You guys familiar with Luke Gromen? Runs Forest for the Trees.
In his tweets.
Yeah. His perspective at a very high level is that the Fed has sort of boxed themselves into this corner with what they've done over the past few years, where no matter what they do, there's going to be a crisis. If they stop raising rates and loosen up policy, then inflation comes back and the long end of the yield curve blows out, and then there's like an economic crisis. And if they hike, then the dollar, which is already sort of like at its limit of strength before blowing up the world, goes up, and then there's a crisis. And basically like all paths at some point lead to a global monetary reset. And the incoming Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, has talked openly about this. Back in the 80s, we had, I think it was the Plaza Accord, right? Where they basically just systematically devalued the dollar. All these countries got together. Just because of the nature of the dollar reserve system, like when there's like a very, very strong dollar, like everybody else in the world gets like destroyed and the system blows up. This is kind of one of the things. This is the main. This is like related to Triffin's dilemma. I don't know if you've heard about it, and it was like a huge concern of John Maynard Keynes back in the day when we did this. Like he wanted to do more of this sort of bank core system with like the basket of assets and everything. Anyway, my view as a result of that is sort of like, okay, there's going to be a crisis at some point. So I kind of think that at the end of the Trump administration, you will probably see like a 30 to 40% decline in the stock market at some point. And you will also probably see the S&P at like 12, 13, 14,000, right? And you will probably see like a major sell-off in Bitcoin, and you also probably see Bitcoin, at like 500K probably, if not higher. So if you are a long-term person, how do you deal with that? Most people can just ride that out, right? If you are a leverage trader, you have to deal with like path dependency, right? Like the direction you go to get from like A to B matters a lot, right? If you get to the price target, but in the middle there's like a drawdown that liquidates your account, then like it doesn't matter. You didn't get the path right. So as that ties into crypto, the safest play for me is just Bitcoin, right? It's like if you want to talk about how to deal with this in the short to medium term, like Bitcoin it's just the best play, because like in all of the paths that can kind of play out, you're okay. But you're more than okay, because like there's this very obvious path for Bitcoin to like 10x here over like a not that long of a time period, right? And so if you want to gamble on all these like altcoins, it's like a pretty high bar, right? You have like a quote unquote free, I'm going to be very liberal in the word free, but for crypto, right? If you're in the crypto
Right.
bubble, I think it's like a free 10x, or crypto's like zero probably. Or you're hyper gambling to try to make 10x in like a month or 6 months or whatever. It's not like a 2021 up only everything market. I don't know how in the altcoin market you guys have been over the last few years, but it's like it's vicious, right? Like we caught the AI bubble pretty good. Like with coins like virtual in the fall, and pointed those out in like the teens, and like virtual ripped to like $4 like very, very quickly. And it went from nobody talking about this stuff to everybody talking about it everywhere. And then like in the span of like 3 days, all of these coins were down like 60%. Just absolute like PvP, player versus player environment. Like you're just playing these like horrific rotations, right? And if you're not a trader, you're just getting like destroyed. It's been so long since we've had like a real alt season that I think people forget what it's like, where just everything goes up, and it goes up kind of sustainably. And I think the main reason that has happened, to tie it all back to what I'm saying, is that like alt season is basically QE season. And we haven't had QE season. Like there hasn't been any QE from the Fed in a while. Like we've had these little weird blips of like stealth QE with like the BTFP program that they did, right? But there hasn't been full blown QE season. But I think if what I'm talking about and what like Luke Groman is talking about plays out, at the end of that nasty stock drawdown, right, you do have QE season, and that is probably the time to buy alts. So all my alt trades, like in the recent past and like even right now, they continue to be like these short-term flips for me. Like I'm not thinking about holding these things for a long period, because like until I see the world melt down and them kind of step in and like the same way they did during COVID again, I think it just keeps being a similar environment. And like, yeah, you could trade that, but like, can you just buy spot and hold it and feel good about it and log off? Probably not.
So, question on that: Are you in this period where you expect Bitcoin to be bullish before that huge sell-off that you're expecting? Are you rolling profits from these shorter-term trades into Bitcoin right now, or how do you manage the cash in your accounts? Because I'm curious, because I do a bit of short-term trading like that, and I'm curious how you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, like I've had a lot of good like short trades, which have played out really nicely. And when those short trades pay out, the market tends to be down, right? So a lot of we took like a Solana short that was quite nice, and when that short was closed, Bitcoin was like 90K. And at like 90K, like I rolled 100% of those profits into Bitcoin. There were some like little scalps like along the way, low 90s, rolled all those profits into Bitcoin. Am I taking profits on stuff into Bitcoin today at like 106K? Yeah, like I might like sit that in cash, wait things out a little bit. We're at like the top of a range. I'm a trader. Those things are important to me. I feel like I can play that. But like if I zoom way out, like I think Bitcoin 100K is, yeah, like I want to be stacking Bitcoin at 100K still. I feel like there's a good chance that this is probably the bottom of the next, major leg up. So kind of a free roll in a way. It's always dicey to make those kind of calls because you don't know what the hell is going to happen. But like long term, I just feel good about stacking Bitcoin even here, because it's like I just do firmly believe that I mean I when people throw out these like 10, 20, $30 million targets, like I tend to agree with them. Like it just, if you just see how the system works, the monetary system, it's just like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen. This is human nature. This is how the governments are structurally set up. It is just this river running down a mountain, and the water is just going to find its way into the ocean at some point.
Mhm.
It's just gravity. So yeah, I buy into that. And but that being said, if it's March and Bitcoin's 200K and I'm crushing a bunch of altcoin trades, no, I'm not going to roll into Bitcoin at
Yeah.
200K in like a red hot market, because I do still expect the sell in May thing to happen, and I do expect people to be like aware of that. And then there's tax season, and people will front run that. And I do think there's like a decent chance that it's all over in March. So that's kind of my shorter term framework, I think. Like if everything's red hot in March and everything is up bigly, and everybody's like, "Wow, the Trump admin is like, it's the greatest thing ever. We're all going to be rich." It's probably a good time to take your ball and go home, and wait. Not saying to sell everything, but like have some cash. And there's just too high a probability that one of these nukes is going to happen. It just feels so inevitable. And maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's, that's why I won't sell everything. I just won't
Yep.
be like I've just been so long, like in the last couple of weeks, but you can't stay like 150% long with like your whole freaking portfolio like for forever. You just lose it all. You have to know when
Yeah.
to stop,
So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, really interesting, because some of the stuff that when I originally started looking at the Discord and following you, you were definitely an ETH bull, and it's gonna go, and it seems like you may still be, but the logical side of you says, like you said, human nature, governments are pointing to Bitcoin being a very solid crypto asset right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm still like an enormous ETH bull. I probably about as bullish on ETH as I've been in the last year right now. I think especially if you're like a trader who who sort of manages risk, and you are kind of more concerned about like the downside versus the upside. Crypto is hard because you sometimes you want to long these altcoins on leverage, but it's like, where do you get out of the trade? Like they're often just trading in outer space, or they're just so volatile. There's not like obvious like rock solid demand. There's no floor in some of these things. Like the floor is just zero. So it's like, how do you manage that? And you end up not being able to put on a lot of size, right? But coins like Bitcoin and ETH, right? The charts are structurally better. And you get these moments where you can kind of look at that trade and be like, oh, okay, like I can frame an idea around here where like I can kind of really shove it in and know that like if it goes below this level, like I'm probably wrong and I can get out, and I can know that, okay, like I'm willing to risk 5 or 10 or 20% of my account on this trade because it's like a long-term idea and I just have very high conviction in it, and I think the probability of it playing out is very, very high. Like I would never risk that much of my account on a perps trade or a scalp, but like I might risk 5 or 10 or even 20% like on a very high conviction thing that I thought was like 90% to happen. And like just the current structure of the ETH chart, I think it's just very, very, very good. I mean, I was pretty vocally bullish at 3,100 on the first dip. I think we bought 3110 or something on that December nuke, and I held on to that position. And I said, like, I know it's going to run this low. I just know it's going to happen, but I'm just not going to sell it. And we did run that low recently, but in doing so, I think we've created like just like a very interesting structure where you have this kind of low coming into this new regime, much in the same way. Like I probably should have made even more money on the election trade. I was like a little PTSD'd, but in reality, like once that election was over and it was done, there was like a low on the chart that was just, the price was not going to go there, right? And you actually could have just slid the leverage bar all the way to the right on Bitcoin and just printed money. It just wasn't going. Why would it go below the sweep like pre-election when like there was like a whole paradigm shift, right? So that was a bit of a small blunder on my part, but you can always do better. But I think the same is here coming into the election over a shorter time horizon. Like I don't know that I'm willing to say, oh, 2,900 or whatever we hit on ETH is going to hold for the whole year, because like if one of these crises plays out, then like all bets are off, and yeah, we could run that for sure. But as far as framing a trade for the next few months, yeah, like Ben, you saw like I framed that trade in the Discord on the ETH chart, and I framed it with the idea that like if you want to be safer, you put your stop below that low, and you could probably just ride this for a bit, because this trade, given the structure of the rest of the chart, can turn into a breakout. And then if there's a breakout from here, you've got this breakout of this enormous multi-year triangle consolidation pattern, similar to what we saw with Ripple. And like I can see it really turbo mooning quite hard. Like everybody is down in the dumps on it because the price is down, as they should be. It's been like a huge disappointment, but like how much has really changed fundamentally about the asset? Not much. Like all the adoption metrics are very, very, very good. The blob space is like basically full. Like all of the big boys are building on ETH. All the BlackRocks of the world are building on ETH. ETH is the only non-Bitcoin coin that's going to have an ETF for probably a while. I don't think that Trump is going to roll into office and just like fast track a Solana ETF in his first 3 weeks. I just don't think that's a priority for him. So you could have a situation where like the bull starts and like you start having the TradFi capital actually come into altcoins finally, and it's a lot of it's going to flow into the ETH ETF. And then you have this other dynamic where like ETH price has been a bit suppressed because everybody on planet Earth who's in crypto like uses it as a short hedge. You've got Athena, which is just sort of systematically like shorting it because it's kind of doing this basis trade thing. And I see a lot of reasons why like a lot of this could like unwind violently in the other direction. It's like basically at the bottom of its Bitcoin range. It still looks like it wants a little bit lower to me, but like how much lower? Like if it goes any lower, it's just going to go to zero, right? So I choose to believe that it's just sort of like near the bottom. And if you are like a spot guy who plays on long time horizons, like these are good opportunities because you have just weeks or months to accumulate positions at like really, really good levels and kind of chill. I just don't think it's going anywhere. And I just see a lot of, positive catalysts. Like, does that mean I've been trading it? Not really, because it just hasn't moved. It just hasn't moved a lot. There's been other stuff that's been sexier, but like I still have a spot bag. I have that position I put on in December, and I'm just gonna see how that plays out.
So
Yeah.
you said something I want to come back to and ask you about. So you said you frame an idea, and does that mean you have like a mental idea that matches with what you see on the chart, or is it the other way around?
When I say I'm framing an idea for a trade, what I'm usually saying is that I am crafting an idea in my head for what the next candle on the chart is going to do. And that may be a 3-month candle or a 6-month candle or a 12-month candle, right? It may be a pretty big time horizon, but I'm generally thinking, what is the next candle going to do? And where do I get a setup where I think I am sort of getting in at the start of the next candle that I think is going to go up, right? So one of the main setups I take when I'm trading, right, is I tend to look for a downtrend, a consolidation and an accumulation above like a really, really key level. And I tend to look for a price to manipulate into that level to maybe make like a sharp fake out move to the downside to run that key level and to then sort of make a move in the other direction, because to me that's like a sign that there's been some accumulation by large players. The breakdown has sort of failed. It's trapped people. They've filled like additional bags, and now they want to move price up to distribute, and I want to sort of be like a part of that leg. So with ETH in particular, I was framing this idea in the Discord around like the 3-month chart. We were looking at some fairly high time frame candles there, right? And if my idea is basically like okay, here's the 3-month range that price has sort of been contained in. I think this is the critical 3-month range. If I see price do something at the bottom of that range, come back into it, right? It makes some sort of structural shift, some sort of like impulsive move that to me signals like a change from bearish to bullish order flow. The framing of the trade is now the idea that, okay, we've taken the bottom of this candle and now we're going to go to the top of the candle. So the framing is quite literally framing around a candle, right? And if price goes back down to the bottom, then that idea is wrong. Like if it goes back below that sort of point on the candle, then I'm like, okay, well now it wants to go lower. That wasn't just a sweep. Maybe it's gonna go lower. So that is quite literally what I mean when I say framing.
Okay.
Hopefully
So
that makes sense.
Question here. So it seems like a lot of your philosophy, I like it. You're a very market structure first guy, and it makes sense you're a TA trader, because I think a lot of people, specifically with Ethereum, were concerned of being squished between Solana and Bitcoin, or didn't have the narrative, or now they want a leadership change at the EF, when really it's just the narrative follows the price. And at the end of the day, it was these market structure factors. So I like that. And to dive more into it, sounds like your strategy is based on what big money is doing. And it's like, when you say it's something along the lines of the big players want to find where the liquidity is, and then if they can like trigger the more retail traders or smaller players and tap that liquidity and maybe stop out those short positions, that's what's happening. And then whenever they get that confirmation, they make the move up. Or how do you think about how the big players are trading, and like why are they accumulating in your view? Is it because of TAs? Is it because of other factors?
I don't know why big players do what they do. I do know that markets move because of them, right? So like very basic market dynamics, right, are that you have these things called ranges, right? You have a range high, you have a range low, and in the middle you have like equilibrium. And that's sort of the base state of price, is that there's like an equilibrium level. When it deviates above, it's in a premium and it tends to go back down to equilibrium. When it goes below equilibrium and it's at a discount, it goes back to equilibrium, right? What we're trying to do as traders is to figure out when the market is transitioning from this state of consolidation around a point of equilibrium and expanding in search of a new point of equilibrium. And we want to ride that wave from here to here. But like what fundamentally causes the market to break from current equilibrium and go in search of a new equilibrium? It's when there is this like critical mass of buying or selling, depending on what direction it's going, that's sort of like overwhelming it. Like, so normally you have like limit orders, market orders, right? When people start taking, right, they just start hitting all they're just market buying, right? And then price starts going. And I think a lot of the times that happens in crypto, that is sort of shenanigans, right? Like if you're like imagine you're a large player who controls like 90% of the supply of something. You could simply buy a bunch down here. You have all the coins, right? And then imagine you just start buying it up with like your huge stack, and you push price up here. Everybody gets excited. They chase, and then you sell into all of the people like panic buying up here. And then when you stop doing that, like there's this kind of after effect where all the people come in and create this blow off top, and in reality there's no demand there anymore, and then price kind of crashes back down. And if you're trading perps, like you have the ability to initiate short positions up here and then ride that wave back down, right? So you can see how like somebody who controlled like most of the coins could just do whatever they wanted. They could basically like accumulate and fuck with people at the bottom and buy all their stops and move markets up. This is like kind of what happens. Like I trade something called like the market maker model. It's this, you know, ICT concept. I think a lot of crypto traders come from that realm. And it just talks, it's just a way of thinking about market cycles. Is these cycles of like accumulation, like a manipulation away from that, and then you have markup, reaccumulation, markup, reaccumulation, and then at the top you have like distribution where all those positions are sold off, and then we do the same thing again in reverse. So that's just how I view markets, as these cycles of like accumulation, expansion, reaccumulation, expansion, distribution, and so on and so forth. And I'm always trying to assess like where a market is in that cycle. And markets are tricky because like time is fractal. Like you can look at a 1 week chart and it can look like nothing is happening. But if you zoom in on the 1 minute chart, you could see like 20 different little market maker models where price is being marked up and marked down and marked up and marked down. But on that like weekly candle, it just looks like a range. So it's just a question of like, what time frame are you trading on? There's no kind of wrong or right thing, and markets are always fluctuating between these states. But yeah, like to bring that back to ETH, like ETH to me has been in like a multi-year sort of accumulation, right? It's like a triangle pattern is sort of like, it is basically this ranging about this kind of equilibrium while it gets like tightened and tightened and tightened. And then you see these explosive moves because as like the range tightens around equilibrium, like eventually it becomes unstable and it just goes at some point, which is kind of where I think we are right now. I hope, maybe.
Hope so too.
So that, you know, one thing that I was going to ask that you sort of brought up is when you're framing these trades, not only do you have to look at the chart, but you have to select the time on the chart you're looking at, the scale. You know, you've talked about 3-month charts, you've talked about, you know, 1 minute charts. Is that a gut feel that you know what to look at? Do you zoom in and out? How do you do that? How do you decide the time frame to trade on?
I mean, I personally always start with like the big, like I start all of my crypto analysis like on the 3-month chart. Now, if I've looked at the 3-month chart to start the quarter, right? Like I don't have to keep doing that every day. It's a 3-month chart. It doesn't change that much. But like in the Discord last week, like it was kind of a crazy week because I called the top of the market when we opened the month. We had that like little spike up, and then I called where we were going, and then I also bought the bottom of that, and then right, and like I think a lot of people were like, "What the hell is going on here?" But in my mind, like that was just from looking at like a monthly candle chart. Like that was just from looking at 3 candles on the monthly chart and like just understanding how price tends to move. And it just made sense to me that would happen. And so with the guidance of that monthly direction, right, I then can go into like a weekly chart or a daily chart or whatever and use that as a bias to guide everything, right? So for example, coming into the month, I was like, okay, Bitcoin is going to be drawn sub 90K at some point. And like I don't want to be like really aggressively in altcoins until that happens, because like all of my long positions are just going to be, there's going to be this like gravity below them, right? But I still took some longs to open the month on shorter time frames, but in the back of my head I'm like, this is a scalp because I know that I'm on borrowed time, right? Now, like last week, like when Bitcoin was trading in the 80s and we loaded up a bunch of positions, you saw me say like, hey, like you could hold this for a while maybe, because now in my mind it's like, okay, now I'm on the side of the bullish bias. Now everything is aligned, right? When you're trading on say like the 4-hour time frame or the 1-hour time frame and you're trying to take longs, but the weekly is bearish, you're trading like you're like swimming against the current, right? And you have to know that. You have to know, like, am I with the high time frame order flow, or am I going against it, right? So the choice of which time frame to trade is more that's more just like, what is your personality? What does your day look like? Like, if you are somebody with a job, right, and you're like, I want to get into trading, then you either trade a very small time frame or you trade a very large time frame, right? Like, the worst thing you can do if you are like a part-time trader is to like trade like the 4-hour chart, because like your average hold is going to be like 2 or 3 days, and you have all these like things that happen overnight and you're screwed, right? So it's better to trade a mega short time frame and scalp, like day trade, because the trade is over in 15 minutes and then you just go back to work. Or you're trading over multiple weeks and it doesn't matter what happens overnight, like you can still sleep. Like, a lot of the stuff I do is like the worst thing you could possibly do. Like, it's the worst thing you could possibly do to take some of these like overnight trades that you hold for like a day or two, because like you go to sleep and you're like, all right, I don't know what's going to happen in Asia and London, and you just wake up and it's not ideal. I would not recommend it. I would recommend, if you want to start trading, I recommend like learning how to trade futures, like NASDAQ futures. And I recommend like learning how to scalp, and then trading very, very short time frames. And the reason I recommend that is because like you are going to get so many reps. Like, you might trade, you might come home after work and trade like the Asia session or the London session or something if you live in the States, and you might be able to put like 5 or 10 trades on in a session. Whereas like if you swing trade the weekly chart, you might put on like couple trades a month. Like, how are you going to learn? You're just not going to get any reps. Whereas like if you take 5 trades a night and you journal and kind of review all of that, like over, after a few weeks, after a few months, you've got like all these trades, if you've seen like all this stuff, you've had all these ideas that worked or didn't work, and you have a lot more to work with. It'd be like trying to play poker and you're like, I'm going to play 5 hands a day. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to play 5,000 hands a day. It's like, who's going to get better faster?
Yeah. That actually answers my next question, was, so for the novice, what do you do? And it comes back to like anything else. Like, my background's big in sports. It's all about reps. Get more reps, you know, polish whatever you're using to do that. And you only get that by, I guess, trying that out. Of course, money's involved here, so it's a little different, but that's I think great advice. So we're coming up here on the last couple segments. Ben, was there anything else you wanted to hit here before I moved on?
Yeah, I wanted to you gave your long-term view about Bitcoin, where it's going, mostly because of the way like the fiat financial system, the monetary system is set up globally.
Mhm.
But I'm curious about where you see crypto tech in general going. Like, do you think it has a place? What do you think of the new AIs are basically just meme coin? They're bots with tokens, but there are some innovations as well. So do you think that's promising? What do you think actually gets usage over the long term in crypto?
Yeah, I mean, I will caveat this answer by saying one of the things I've learned over the last few years is that it's really important to figure out what your lane is and to stay in that lane, and that most people's lane of expertise is actually like a lot narrower than they perceive it to be. If you're a chef, doesn't mean you can farm. If you're an economist, it definitely doesn't mean you can trade. And just because you trade crypto doesn't mean you understand crypto technology. Now, I would say that like I'm more into it than the vast majority of traders, and I pay a lot more attention to it than the vast majority of traders. And I am super into it, but I don't know how like great my opinion is there. But when I pragmatically look at what actually works and is being used in crypto, like it is just basically like stable coins and trading, and that branches out very easily into tokenized assets and just the ability to settle stuff. And all of that is super, super valuable. I think that like Trump has like an incredible opportunity to basically enshrine the dollar forever and to effectively like vampire attack the rest of the world. Because if you think about it, there's like all this like trapped capital all over the place. Like there's people who live in countries with capital controls. Like there's banks there that charge these like insane spreads for lending, and the legal system is fucked. And there's like all these like obstacles to like having economic activity flow smoothly. But like, what does a world look like where everybody has access to crypto, which is basically where we are? Because it's kind of hard, even in these like Argentina, like everybody was using Tether and stuff. Like it's not like people didn't know how to use that. You can't. I guess if you're China, you can ban the internet completely, but like most countries aren't like that though. So you assume like people have access to this stuff. Like, what does the world look like if there's like tokenized stock? Like, what if everybody in the world like has the ability to buy tokenized? Excuse my dog. He's constantly at war with the neighbor's dog here. Like what does it look like if instead of like having to keep your money in like your piece of trash currency, like you have access to go buy Apple stock? Like what happens if all of this capital just like leaves these places and flows into dollar denominated assets because like we have like an intelligent policy that like enables this and like sucks all that capital here? What does it look like if like a business in like Dubai or some random place can raise money from the entire world as opposed to just locally? Obviously the permissionless lending is really cool, and the ability to just swap one asset for another and have these like effectively like world synchronized servers, which is like a very big deal, and it's just not something we have in the system. Like I think all this stuff is like really, really good, and it's all largely stuff we've already built. And it's why like a lot of the stuff I'm really bullish on from like a buy and hold perspective kind of fits into this niche. Like I've been very bullish on stuff like Curve and Athena, because they sort of fit into both the realm of like crypto's best use case, which is stable coins, like kind of like rails or infrastructure for stable coins. And then they also fit in with the bucket of like, I want to be long stuff that is like pro regulatory paradigm, right? So that is stuff like I have a high degree of confidence in. I know for a fact like AI will get dumb in crypto. Like, will anything come of it? I think probably. I think that when you just get so many people, like we talk about how like, oh, this thing doesn't need a token. What's the point of this? We're hyper gambling. But like, if you have this system that just attracts so many people into it, and they all start experimenting, and you generate these like massive network effects, like you're creating this like cauldron where something is maybe going to accidentally be created, and something can kind of come out of it just due to the raw amount of like human ingenuity you've kind of packed into this area. So like I don't want to sit here and say like nothing will come of it, because I think it's probably not true. And I also think that most of the reason nothing has come of crypto from this point has just been like nobody's been able to build anything cool because like everybody's just had a boot on their neck. So I'm pretty forgiving in that aspect. But yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm most bullish on. I'm trying to think if I have any other like sort of grandiose longer term things, but like the sad truth of what's happened to me in this space for so many years, going through. I mean, I feel like I've been through Vietnam like 4 times, and like at a certain point in time, you get a little bit jaded. You see so many scams, so many rugs, so many false promises. You understand why a lot of these Bitcoin people are just like they just become these like Bitcoin robot cult people who like it's the only thing they can think about. And it kind of makes sense because it's like a coping mechanism to allow you to just survive, right? That's kind of what it is. Like I don't think there's anything particularly intellectual about it. It's just like a safety bubble that you put on and you survive with it, right? I get that, and I too have become jaded, and I've just seen so much trash. And even to this day, I see so many things people are shilling or whatever. And I'm like, this is trash. And like, I feel like I used to be one of those people who couldn't see something was trash, and now I mostly see it, and I just look around being like, why are you buying this, like, non-ironically, or not just because you think the next guy will make it go higher and you could sell it to him, which are both valid reasons. But
Yeah, I think we're in the same boat as you there, as seeing stablecoins, some DeFi's fundamental use cases, tokenization. We've been talking about this on our last few shows, so definitely agree. And easy to get jaded. I think I definitely have. I think you have the Grand Tonto, even though you're a relative newcomer. So
No, yeah, I think one thing we talk about a lot on the show is stable coins are a way to export the dollar. Um, I think somewhere I read that either Tether or Circle is now the 14th largest holder of U.S. Treasuries in the world, and that's only going up. Um, so the whole tokenization narrative really resonates with me, I guess. Um, I don't like, why would I bet against BlackRock and what all these big banks are doing? And what if, we talk about how big this asset is or that asset, but what if the entire worldwide financial system is tokenized? That's trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. It dwarfs anything that's around now.
on Ripple, on XRP, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, that was all I had. Ben, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that's it. I would like to ask you, what are your favorite? I guess like AI is still going to be huge. People are comparing it to like the rise of DeFi. I saw a chart. Basically, it's a similar type of market cap growth, early days DeFi. Do you think we get that blow off top with AI coins from a pure trade perspective, or what other sectors, coins outside of just like pure chart day to day are you looking at?
yeah, it's a good question. Like I said earlier, like I don't have a lot of AI right now in my portfolio, so I kind of have like reverse bag bias. You buy a bunch of stuff and you think it's like life-changing technology. But the end, yeah, I know, like beginning of the year, I know, like, Jonah from 1000X, it's just hyper AI, and I was just like, fuck, man, like, I don't know. And then I just had this weird moment where I was like, I'm up like 80x on some of this shit. I should just like sell it, and like I
Yeah.
probably luckily like top ticked it, and I'm like very low on it. Like I bought a little bit back on virtual earlier, but like I don't like, even though I got a really good price on it, like I don't feel super good about it. Like it just feels like too easy. It's just like, oh yeah, this hyper bubble and it dipped and now it goes up again. Like, so I don't know. Like I feel like that plays out at some point. I'm not sure if it just goes back up from here or if there's like a lot more pain first. Like we saw, like how quickly did like all the meme coins die, right? Like everybody was like, oh yeah, meme coins super cycle, and just all went to zero, and it's still terrible. Like I actually think the meme trade is probably interesting now. We talked about buying Whiff, I think was an interesting play. Again, like not sure if that's like a bounce or whatnot, but like these things kind of go in and out of vogue. But I will say the AI thing is different because like you do have these people building these real things that have like at least like the semblance of value, and you have like AI XBT, for example, whatever you may think of it as, like a glorified chatbot, or it just scrapes Twitter data. It does do something valuable. Like even if all it does is scrape Twitter data, like there's a lot of noise on Twitter. It's hard to see everything. Something that just aggregates all that. Like you see like these early embers of value burning. So yeah, I think I'm pretty bullish on that coming back at some point. I think the DeFi AI stuff is really interesting because this has always been a pain point of mine, and it's actually something I'm like building on the side as well. Because like crypto UX is just like horrific. It's a horrific thing to use, and it's horrific to just parse out everything that's happening. It's just such a high noise environment. So it's like a space where like having like a co-pilot next to you that you just talk to and be like, buy every coin that is in the AI bucket between X and Y market cap and split a $50,000 portfolio and weight it by market cap. To do something like that would be like really cool, right? Or to just be like, hey, like scan on chain, show me charts where this sort of formation is happening, or and filter that. The amount of utility that is there is so high to me, right? And I'm just like, oh, I would pay just enormous amounts of money for something that did this, right? So I know there's a there, and I think there's an interesting niche there, and I know some of this stuff is already done very well. You get projects like Griffin that have just gone spectacular high. My main concern in that area is that it's not like a global market. Like, what is the market for people who want like crypto co-pilots, like to trade in the trenches? Like, not that high, but those are very high value users. But it's like stuff like there's this stuff like Banana Gun, right? It's like a cool project, generated tons of revenue, and it did really, really well. How big will that token get? Like, I don't know. It's kind of capped. Versus, you had something like remember Steppen?
Mm-hmm.
Like Steppen was like, that was a great Ponzi because people were like, well, everybody walks. The total addressable market is like 7 billion people, right? So you could dream outside of it. Like, that's the kind of thing we need that like really transcends crypto. But I don't know what that is yet. Like, the honest, like super boring answer is that I'm just so bullish on Bitcoin right now because it's just so obvious and it's so easy. But it is very boring, and there's nothing that interesting there to me. I'm curious what happens in the L2 space in Bitcoin. I think some interesting stuff could happen there. I still want to see if the Bitcoin community writ large even cares about it, because like you could build like really cool stuff, but if this is like a network effects game and all that capital actually just wants all their capital to sit there and do nothing, then it might not work. But I think that could be the thing. You know that I've been buying and very underwater on stacks, which has been one of my worst plays so far. But signs of life today, so please God. But yeah, I see that as a potential thing. But I don't know. Like, a lot of times I am literally just scrolling Twitter at 3 a.m. and just rabbit holing. And then suddenly, like, I see a tweet and I go in the comments and I do something, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God. Like, that's how I found virtual. I was rabbit holing. I was just rabbit holing some stuff. And then it was somebody else's tweet. And it's often not the tweets you see. It's when you open the comments and read the comments and then start going through that way. You sometimes start finding the stuff. And yeah, I found this project and I was just like, oh God, this is going to moon. This is like everything I've always wanted. And I was upset to find out that it had already existed for like a while, and I could have actually bought it for pennies and done like really, really huge numbers. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe you talk to me tomorrow and I'll be like, yeah, I was on Twitter last night and I just found this. I just found this thing.
It's the best way to do it in my experience too. Just crypto Twitter. It's got to be like the disheveled man meme. That's where you get the
Yeah.
most returns, unfortunately, in this
But
market. So I definitely
the key to crypto Twitter is like, you have to be going out there and like foraging for your stuff. Like, if you're just sitting back and you think the algorithm is delivering you like
it's slop.
insane alpha, no, you're just like the guy at the end of the human centipede at that point, right? It's like, it's very easy to just very badly use crypto Twitter, and you're just constantly buying the top of everything because it's just feeding. You're just, all of the other stuff like already happened in some like Telegram chat that you're not in, and everybody already bought. It's just really quite a brutal environment, which is why it's like good to learn how to trade and to find these ideas, because you can kind of look at stuff and just on the chart just like identify like, oh, there's some buying happening here, and or the markup has started to happen and I can get in, or as opposed to like, oh, I heard this thing and it sounds really hot, so I'm just gonna buy it, I guess, because this KOL shilled it to me and he found whatever coin like 8 months ago. It's just, it's not a very high probability strategy.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Stephen, I want to be cognizant of your time. We're coming up on an hour here, but I just wanted to turn the floor over to you. Is there anything you want to talk about? Your podcast, the new community, any of that? Feel free to give any of that stuff a shout out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been doing the Alfalfa Podcast it's been 3 years now. God, they always say bear markets are for building, and I didn't realize that I was inadvertently like a bear market builder, but I have been bear market building for the last 3 years, because 3 years ago I had like 100 Twitter followers and just started this podcast and nobody was listening to it, and then we kind of built this little weird core community. And then it was pretty wild to me because I don't have like a ton of followers still. I probably have like 3,200 followers on Twitter or something. But it was very wild to me when I started this the Magic Lines premium community, where we're doing like the more in-depth trade signals and the education and everything, because I think we have 99 people there now in like a week, and I have not really advertised it other than Discord and a podcast announcement. And it was super wild to me that that's a very high conversion rate. Like I spent a lot of time doing like e-com and stuff kind of in the middle of my poker to trading transition. And like, man, like if you get like 100 people in like a 3,000 person audience who are going to pay like $100-something a month for a product, like that's an enormous conversion rate. Like it's so high. Like I thought I was going to start this, and then I thought I would have like 10 or 15 people right now. So it's been really cool to see that. And if anybody is like interested in learning how to do what I do, or just like wants like another opinion, because I think this is what this is all about. Like you shouldn't go into crypto and be like, I'm going to offload all of my decision making and conviction to this one person. It's a much better strategy to try to filter out people who are smart or like not obvious shills, right? Which is hard to do, like if you don't really know what you're doing. It's much easier said than done. But like if you can get like 5 or 6 or 7 opinions that you can kind of check on regularly, and if they charge money for something and they're smart, like it's worth it. Like I know not everybody's working with like a huge bankroll, but like I buy everything that is even remotely valuable. Like I've bought so many bought so many trading courses. I've paid for so many like paid groups, most of which I'm not in anymore, but some of them I still am in, because when you factor in the ROI, not just from your capital, but from the stuff you learn and how that compounds like over the years. Like if I was in like my early 20s, I would like reinvest all the capital. I would just join like every freaking paid group. Like if it was a good one, like if I knew it was a good paid group, I would take all the money. I wouldn't be like compounding my capital. I'd be just reinvesting all the capital into compounding my knowledge, because all that knowledge you accumulate is just going to be like every year it just kind of just hockey sticks up. It's just like so hard to quantify like how valuable that is. And I did all of this very much on my own, and it was very hard. Like when I get started in this, like I wasn't connected to anybody. I didn't know anybody else who traded. I didn't know anybody else who did crypto like I did, and I had to sort of like claw and scratch my way into like some sort of network, into some of these groups, into finding out like who knows what they're talking about in trading, who should I give my money to, who should I run from. So like if I could go back in time and like I had this community that I just started, or even just the free Alfalfa community, it would have saved myself just so much like pain and anguish. And it would have been good to just have like a community there to kind of like go through all of like the nonsense with you. So like I highly recommend it. Obviously I'm biased because it's my thing, but even if you don't join my thing, there's other stuff out there that I think is really, really good. Like I'd always shill people Benjamin Cohen's stuff, because I think it's a really good product and I think it's a fair price. And I think if you manage any reasonable amount of capital for yourself, like it'll pay for itself. And it's a good data point. And collect the data points of the Ben Cohens. Maybe you want to join like the Haven and like hang out with all these like degen traders and see what they're thinking. Maybe you want to see what I'm thinking, but like surrounding yourself with like people and ideas that are good. And like I don't even hang out on Twitter that much anymore because it's just so much noise. Like all of the value is in like finding your network, finding your tribe, finding your mentor or mentors, and soaking up all of that. A lot of the other stuff is just like it's just gonna fuck with your head, honestly, and make you do bad stuff. But yeah, if anybody's interested in checking it out, magiclines.xyz, you can find it. And we're running a lifetime discount right now for probably another week. So code magic75 and magic800, that gets you 75 off the monthly for life and 800 off the annual for life. Little asterisk there, if inflation goes to 50%, like I will raise the prices, but I will keep yours the lowest. So I just want to put that out there in case we go full Mad Max or something. But for the most part, yeah, I wanted to really like lock in this like initial community and use them as kind of like my beta test guinea pigs, where I was like, what is this product going to be? And to reward people who've been there with me for a long time, and for people who deal with me kind of changing stuff up for the first few weeks. So I'm glad you're in there, Ben. Glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah, super. So I'll promote it for you because I think it's just as valuable as you said. And I think I just want to give some light on the reason people did join like that is because you gave out so much free alpha and people trusted you. Just for years, I was in that Discord. You helped me, like you said, validate my own theses, understand what you were thinking on certain areas where I'm not as knowledgeable. So I'd see something, I'd have this thesis, and then you would back it up with your TA, and that would give me some reinforcement there. So you build up that trust for so long, and I think that's why it's successful so far. And like you said, super high value, and so far it's been amazing for me. So we'll definitely link it below and check it out if you're interested in this sort of thing for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Yes, sir.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for agreeing to be here. This was an incredibly quick turnaround. I think for me, this was the most educational interview that we've ever done, or podcast we've ever done. So we're not necessarily the same generation, but your knowledge, I'm going to just call you my trading mentor, even though you're quite a bit younger. This has been great, and thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, Stephen.
All right. Have a good one, guys.